What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our Week 10 college football preview. And, you just got to mention it already. Michigan State already at 3 for the college football playoff rankings. Alabama surprisingly at 2 and Georgia at 1, and Oregon coming in at 4. How you feeling about the top 4?
I actually like that they put Oregon ahead of Ohio State because I think head-to-head should matter, especially when you beat a team on the road. Don't like Alabama at 2. That's probably my least favorite part of the rankings. I really, really hope that they don't lose to Georgia and then still get in, because that would be just a disaster.
And then, if you're Cincinnati, Michigan, Wake Forest, Oklahoma, I'd be pretty happy, honestly, with those rankings because, they already have one-loss teams ahead of them. And if you stay undefeated, there's no reason that they're not going to put them ahead of you. So definitely something to look forward for the next 3-4 weeks here as we start getting closer to the final selection. But we'll move right into it here. And Ty, taking a huge stride last week, pulling 5 games off of me. What I said, I think you said 12 in a row. That's pretty good right there.
Yeah, I just picked the right upsets with Auburn, Mississippi State, and Houston winning late. So just a lot of upsets that went my way last week, but I'll take it.
And then this week, the only ranked team that's on a bye is Oklahoma. Looked pretty solid since Spencer Williams took over. And I think it's just going to be, or not Spencer Williams, Caleb Williams. Spencer Rattler's probably already thinking about the transfer portal for next year. And it's just going to be interesting to see how this team, can play out at the end of the year. But we're doing this on Wednesday. So tonight you got big rivalry in the state of Michigan, the Chips versus the Broncos. And we're both going with Western here, but you're going with Western by 100.
Yeah, I just think they come out firing. Obviously, I got to rep my Broncos today. And, for whatever reason, even when Western has a down year, they just own the Chips of late. So I think that continues and they run through them again.
And then moving on to Saturday, as there was no Thursday or Friday games this week that are pretty interesting. But I'm assuming I can speak for you here in Georgia in a rout. And 38, though, is an interesting spread. Because, I feel like the starters might be out of this game at halftime. And, it's something to worth. I mean, I think it's a fair spread, but 38, you got to take the points if you're a bettor here, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, 38, so that's a lot of points. But I would definitely take the under if I'm betting this game. I mean, Missouri's not going to score more than 7 on Georgia. Probably won't even score that much.
And then an interesting matchup here. Going into Nebraska, as you've seen already this year, teams have struggled. Michigan State have struggled with this Nebraska team. And Ohio State has to go into Nebraska on Fox Big Noon. Tough place to play, especially when it's a primetime game. And Ohio State, has to cement that they are still the best team or best one-loss team in the country. And I think they're going to get it done here, just with how they've been playing with CJ Stroud. I think he's just going to keep having a great game. And I'm expecting them, when they play Michigan State, should be pretty much whoever wins the Big Ten.
Yeah, this isn't just a walk in the park like it seems like with Nebraska's record. Nebraska has played a lot of teams close, like you said. So I think they have a chance to hang in this game. But even if they do, they're not going to have enough to pull it off. Ohio State's just going to make too many plays.
And then I think the team that got snubbed the most is Wake Forest. I know they're at 9, and, ACC hasn't really been special this year, but you got to give them their props. I mean, they're number 9 in the country, 8-0, a team that came out of nowhere. And here they are, not even favored on the road against the 4-4 North Carolina team. But I'm going with Wake Forest just because I think they're going to keep it rolling, but you tend to disagree here.
Yeah, unfortunately for Wake Forest, I think these first rankings, even though it's still early, I think that's it for their playoff hopes. I think they're done. Even if they win out, they don't even play a ranked team the rest of the season. So I think even going undefeated might not be enough to get in the playoff. But I don't think it's going to matter because I think North Carolina is going to pull the upset. I think watching them hang in with Notre Dame last week, I think they're going to score a lot of points on a kind of poor Wake Forest defense and outscore Wake Forest.
And here you got a pretty interesting matchup in Liberty, who's kind of been that sleeper, team that's under the radar at 7-2 here, going against Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. I'm still going with Ole Miss, though. I think it's just hard to bet against Lane Kiffin and that Ole Miss squad. They got Matt Corral, who's having a great year, and I think if you're a better here, it's just the safe bet to go with Ole Miss.
Yeah, if you like watching potential NFL quarterbacks, this is the game for you because Liberty actually has the number 1 quarterback for the draft right now in Malik Willis. And then obviously Ole Miss has a Heisman contender in Matt Corral. So you're going to get good quarterback play here. But I think that line is honestly a little disrespectful to Ole Miss. Maybe they think Liberty with their head coach, Hugh Freeze, being a former Ole Miss coach. He's coming in with some revenge on his mind. But I got to go Ole Miss and the points here.
And then at 12, you got a Big Ten matchup. Pretty much don't really need to talk about this one. We're both going Minnesota here. And I think Illinois has just been a disappointment so far this year, and expect Minnesota, to keep rolling. And then on pretty much we can just say the same thing about this game. Duke hasn't really showed anything, and Pitt coming off that upset last week. And I expect them to get back on track here. So do you. And, just play angry and really put it towards Duke. But here at the 3:30 slate, I'm going to disagree with you here. I know State just beat our team in Michigan, and all props to State. They're a really good team. You can't blame the refs. I mean, there were some questionable calls, yeah, but at the end of the day, Michigan had their chance to go drive down the field and win it twice, and they just couldn't get it done. But I'm going with Purdue just because I think it's one of those like after the fact games. They're still on that cloud 9 from that big win. And Purdue, they beat Iowa this year.
Yep.
And they're very capable of pulling off the upset at home. This is another like Purdue Super Bowl, you could say, for them. And that only 3 points that they're giving Purdue is, really telling on how this Purdue team is going to be. So that's why I'm going with the Boilermakers.
Yeah, Michigan State's going to get everything they can handle from Purdue. That 3-point spread is just right, I think, with a game like this. Michigan State has done this before where they've beat Michigan and just completely laid an egg the next week, as you saw last year. So I think Purdue's going to give them everything they can handle, but I just think Kenneth Walker is going to be the difference here, and I don't think they'll be able to stop them enough, similar to Michigan. So I think Michigan State gets to 9-0.
All right, we'll get back to the quick, reaction here. Cincinnati wins big against a very poor Tulsa team this year, and Cincinnati's going to need some help to get in the playoff, but I expect them to get to 9-0 here. And pretty much the same thing. Notre Dame should win big here. This was a game going into the year where it could be a potential, great game, but Navy just hasn't had reached those expectations. So we're both going Notre Dame. Yep. And then here, you can make the agreement, you can make a statement here for West Virginia. I know you took them last week in that upset against Iowa State. But Oklahoma State, at 11th and 7-1 in the Big 12, still has a few big games ahead of them and could potentially, ruin some playoff chances moving forward.
Yeah, the Big 12, similar to the Big 10, is kind of backloaded with the schedule, as you have obviously Oklahoma State, and Baylor. None of those teams have played each other yet. So Oklahoma State's got to get through this game, and they have everything they need in front of them. But sadly for them, kind of similar to Wake Forest, even if they win out, I don't think that's going to be enough to get in the playoff. But you got to get through this game to at least give yourself a chance, and I think they will.
And speaking of that Baylor team, going into TCU, Battle of Texas here, and I'm expecting Baylor to win big. That 6.5 is very enticing if you're a bettor. I think they'll win more than 6.5. But I think just Baylor is kind of an easy lock here.
Yeah, I agree. I would take Baylor in the points. I think TCU is just kind of in shambles right now. Obviously, they got rid of Gary Patterson after almost 20 years. So he's the guy that brought the program up, and now he's gone. So I don't really know where they go from here, but it could be ugly Saturday.
And then I would say the best matchup of the week is you got the only ranked teams playing each other, and 13 and 14 in Auburn and Texas A&M. We're gonna disagree here on this one. Is I'm going Texas A&M. I think mostly just because I'm still on that. Oh, they still beat Alabama when they were number one in the country, unranked. I think that game, has really turned the corner for this Texas A&M. Not even just this year, but a franchise and you know dynasty win here. And I just think they're going to keep it going and win this game.
Yeah, I just kind of had a feeling that Alabama win for A&M just kind of turned all the attention away from all their issues they really had. So I really want to see them win one more of these games to prove that that wasn't just kind of a fluke win.
Mhm.
I personally think they're a little overranked going into these rankings. I think they kind of, I'm not going to speculate, but it's possible they ranked Texas A&M this high so they could justify putting Alabama at 2. So just going off that, I like what I've seen from Auburn, and I think they can go in there and win this game.
There was no line or over or under for this BYU game just because I think this is an FCS school. I can't even remember what it is. I think it's Texas something. I don't know.
So
But
it's like the Tigers.
yeah, uh, pretty much BYU big win. And you got another interesting game here. I'm surprised that Wisconsin was ranked at 5-3. I guess this committee still thinks highly of Wisconsin, and we're both going with Wisconsin. But it could be a trap game, and how Rutgers has played the Big Ten pretty competitively this year.
Yeah, Wisconsin quietly has really gotten right back on track. I know they're 5-3, but they've played 3 good teams in those losses. And if you look at their schedule, they could definitely get to 9-3 and win the Big Ten West. So I like what I'm seeing from them. I think that over under, although it's really low, that looks about right because Wisconsin, you're not going to be able to run on them. So I think they're really going to limit Rutgers on offense and win this game pretty easily.
At 4, we're both going with Arkansas here in the upset. I mean, it's not really an upset, but rankings wise, it is. It still is kind of disrespectful that Mississippi State's 17th in the nation, and then they're not even favored, and it's not even a close really spread. But I'm going with Arkansas just because I think they need to get back on track quick, as this team was like a top 10 team just a month ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if Mississippi State is overranked. I mean, they're a 5-3 team, ranked 17, but they have beat Texas A&M and Kentucky. But I think that luck they've kind of had fades in this game. Arkansas is still a good team despite their record, and I think they get back on track in this game.
And then you're going with Florida State here.
Mhm.
This team pretty much the first 3 weeks was already written off as one of the worst teams this year. But they've kind of starting to gain that momentum. Big win against UMass, and yeah, I think it's definitely possible, but I just can't go against NC State right now.
Yeah, I just think this is kind of the game where you can bring a program, not bring them back, but kind of start them on the right track because obviously Florida State was just horrible at the beginning of the year, like embarrassingly bad. But I think the way they've been playing lately, they hung right in with Clemson on the road last week. So I think they really have things quietly turning around, and I think it comes to light this week, and they pull an upset.
All right, so at the beginning of this year, you would think that this game would be probably a top 10 matchup, but unfortunately, LSU just hasn't lived up to those expectations, and that's why Alabama's favored by 28.5. You just can't bet against Alabama, even though they lost this year once. It's just you can't bet against them, and I might even take that 28.5 point spread just because it's Alabama in a rivalry game. Over these last 10 years, that it's been pretty competitive, and I expect Alabama to win big.
Yep. It's Coach O's last game against Alabama, so maybe they have something in the playbook that they haven't brought out yet. But I think it's just a matter of how many points is Alabama going to score on LSU.
And then I'm going with the upset here in Tennessee. The line is even, which is pretty interesting to me. Just because Kentucky ranked 18th in the nation, and I don't know. I feel like Tennessee can play these games. They hang around in these games and games that matter against ranked teams, but they just can't get it done. And I think finally this year they're going to get one.
This was basically a coin flip game for me, and generally coin flip games, I pick the home team. But Tennessee has definitely been looking a lot better since the beginning of the season after they made the quarterback change. And Kentucky definitely was overranked going into last week. So we'll see if they can get back on track here. They're still on pace for one of their best seasons they've ever had. So this is a game they got to get, and I think they will.
And then you got Iowa and Northwestern, and we're both going with Iowa here, even though Northwestern has a pretty, stifling defense, you could say. It's just unfortunately they've been exposed too much, and I think it's just going to hurt them. But that 40.5 for the over-under is perfect for this game because it feels like neither of these teams score. And I honestly might even go with the under here in Iowa on the road.
Yeah, I might too. I think this is going to be an ugly game. Obviously, Iowa is just in a free fall right now after that huge win over Penn State. So I think Northwestern might even cover that 12 points here playing at home. And I think this could be like a 17-7 kind of game here. So I think Iowa wins, but very ugly.
And then I know you're in love with this Fresno State team this year. I think they'll win big here at home. 7-2 is pretty good for this Bulldog team. And, we got Boise State, who's been good the last 10 years, but I just think Fresno State has too much talent on offense to lose this game.
Yeah, I agree. And this is another reason Oregon is ranked 4. They beat Fresno State, which a lot of people forget. Now that's a ranked win. So I got Fresno State in this one, and I think they're really going to help Oregon in the long run if they keep winning.
And speaking of Oregon, we're both going with them. And another one of those spreads that I would definitely take in that 7. Washington has just looked not even mediocre at best. That 4-4 is pretty much just, I guess, the best outcome that they could have had so far this season through 8 games. And, after that week 1 loss, it pretty much was like, yeah, this Washington team is not what we thought it was going to be. But for Oregon, getting that 4th and last spot in the college football playoff says a lot about this team. And I expect them to stay there, potentially move up if someone ahead of them loses. But they should easily get to 8-1.
Yeah, you never know with this game. It is a rivalry, and Washington can play some defense, but the problem with them is they just have no quarterback play. So I think Oregon should win this game pretty easily. We saw when Washington played Michigan that obviously they just couldn't move the ball at all, really. So I think this is a game Oregon should easily win.
And speaking of Michigan, how are you going to respond to last week's, 16-point blown lead? It hurts to say as a Michigan fan, but you got to come to reality. And they didn't play their best game down the stretch. Through the first half, I'm thinking, all right, we got this one. Like, they were looking solid. But it's going to be, how do you respond? And I think they're going to have a huge win here. They're ticked off more than ever. And, Jim Harbaugh, you could say at 7-1, he's on the hot seat, but it just felt like that, the whole year. In previous years as well, just can't beat his in-state rival or, crosstown rival. So I'm going Michigan big here, and I expect them to really show that they are still the 7th best team in the country.
Yeah, that number 7 ranking, obviously the committee has a lot of respect for Michigan even after that loss. So, if they win out, even if they don't get to the Big Ten championship, that could still be enough to get into the top 4. So I'm looking for them to just come out as a new team here. It's a new 4-game season. And this is still a good team. Honestly, last week after 2.5, maybe 3 quarters, I was saying that was the best performance of the Harbaugh era. Now, obviously, it didn't end well, but That just shows what they're capable of. So I think they come out angry and cover that 20-point spread.
And then the last game that we got is San Diego State, and we're going to see how Brady Hoke and his team responds after their first loss of the year. Going against Hawaii, that's why it's at 11 o'clock at night. Not really normal to see an 11 o'clock start time, but we're both going San Diego State here, and I think they can cover that 7.5.
Yeah, it's everyone's least favorite game, a road game against Hawaii, traveling all the way across the world, really, to play them. So I guess that's really the only thing that could really trip up San Diego State, but they should keep winning here.
And that'll be it for today's video. Make sure you come back next week as we're going to be breaking down, the college football playoff, that rankings again, and we'll see if I can catch up to tying the picks, because we had a few picks different this week. But until next week, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.